16 years after my mother's affair, my dad still refuses to date. My father has always been my superhero. He worked full-time and still managed to put me on the bus every morning. He raised my sister and I entirely on his own. He put me through school, helped me get my first car. He was there for every birthday, graduation, any difficult times I was going through. He'd drop everything and drive hours to make sure I was okay. I never had a close relationship with my mother, nor do I have many fond memories of her. She had severe insecurities about herself that she projected onto me at a very young age. She would purposely give me ugly haircuts because sometimes she felt I was prettier than her. She would force me to take photos of her for hours until she got the perfect one for her Facebook profile. She was a deeply insecure person and tended to seek out validation online. I was 9 years old when my parents separated. At the time I was actually excited because my friend's parents were divorced and I thought it was so cool he had 2 Christmases. I didn't understand what was happening and also didn't remember anything about my mother's infidelity until I was a teenager. I was around 15 when everything started to come back after a traumatic experience I went through. I vividly began to remember the first time I, as a 7-year-old, walked in on my mother having sex with the man she cheated on my dad with, who she is still with to this day. He, I'm going to call him Greg, was a guy she went to high school with. They reconnected through Facebook and unbeknownst to my dad, she began a secret relationship with him. As a kid I'd always get frustrated because I'd want to play computer games but my mom was always on Facebook, and I now understand that was because she was communicating with this guy. There were also other men too, but Greg was the most serious. My mother decided she wanted to escalate and begin meeting with Greg in person. She would use the excuse that she was going to visit her father, meanwhile she was going to see Greg. The worst part about this is that she would bring my sister and I with her and force us to go to his place and play with his kids. They first met up again at an A&W, something my sister still blames herself for. As kids, our go-to fast food place was Wendy's, so it was particularly odd that this road trip she suggested A&W. I said no and my sister said yes, so we went to A&W. To my mom's surprise, Greg was there. I now realize, through years of therapy, that this was all pre-planned and a way to make their meeting up and hanging at his house look more casual. My mom didn't consider the fact that this decision would make my sister blame herself for my parents' marriage falling apart, all because she said yes to going to A&W. When we went to his house for the first time, his daughter was quite mean to me as she was a bit older, and one time she had hit me while we were playing, so I went to go tell my mom and walked into the room and I saw them having sex. I didn't understand what was happening and I immediately began to cry as I thought he was attacking her. I ran to my sister to tell her and my mom came running out and made us promise not to tell our dad. The scene is still burned into my mind. Months went by and the guilt grew. My mom started being less sneaky and my dad actually walked past the computer one time and saw messages being exchanged between Greg and her. He immediately left the house in shambles. Mom chased after him. They talked and she said my dad didn't love her enough, my dad promised to do better, and my mom promised she would stop talking to Greg. She didn't. Eventually, when I was 8, my dad accepted that he had lost her completely and they started planning their separation. He reminded my mom that she would be responsible for keeping in contact with us, my sister and I, not the other way around. He wanted to make it as easy on my sister and I as possible. My mom said she understood. When I was 9, my mom packed her things and moved across the country. She tried keeping connections with us through Skype, but the calls got fewer and fewer. She eventually abandoned us completely. My father has never seen a single dime from her and has raised us completely alone financially. This caused issues when my dad tried to finalize the divorce and my dad reassured that he didn't need her money. He was always so selfless and kind. He never spoke a single bad thing about my mother. My mother began posting on Facebook saying she can't understand why my dad didn't chase after her, that's what she wanted, she didn't want it to come to this. My mom is literally insane. She to this day still talks badly about my dad. I am now 23 and I still hold guilt over keeping my mom's affair from my dad. My dad has never tried dating again. He shut out his entire circle of friends, he became very isolated. The only people, he says, that matters in his life is my sister and I. My dad never sought out therapy, despite my sister and I constantly encouraging it. He is now 65 and it's unbearable seeing him be alone. His trust was completely shattered and it completely changed him as a person. I wondered if because he had to raise both my sister and I that he felt he had no time to focus on himself and his own well-being. I want my dad to be happy and I can tell that he still struggles with these issues greatly every day. I still feel like if I had told him what happened earlier, maybe things would be better. Maybe he would have been able to move on and find someone who loved him genuinely, or maybe he wouldn't have become so isolated. I still want him to go to therapy, but nothing I say to him changes his mind, but I feel he would greatly benefit from it. I want him to be able to date again, or even just go out with friends again, but I don't know how to encourage him to do this. Recently my mom has tried to reconnect with me, but I want absolutely nothing to do with her. She said she was sorry for ruining our lives, and the words felt empty and crass. I don't know how to respond to my mom or if I should even respond at all. I don't know if I'll ever be able to have a relationship with my mother again after what she did to my dad.